Okay, I wish I'd caught this as I walked off the meeting and went to go to the bathroom and came back. So a lot of it has failed me. But but I want to try to go for it. Okay, so just let's just take a minute to center ourselves with each other, just for a minute to reconnect, close down the meeting we were just in, and maybe open up, be present to that, and maybe open up into what I want to talk about. So there are two events that happen that you and I keep exploring that we don't yet have cognitive articulation about. Like it doesn't, and how we know we don't have cognitive articulation, if we can tell it doesn't transmit, we can tell it doesn't sit right. So that's just kind of the deal. But I want to discuss the two events, and then I want to try to see if I can recall, and I mean literally our definition of recall. I definitely have in the remembrance, see if I can
Hmm.
call it back, call it into here, what I got present to in between classes and now. So the first event, which I'm going to ask you to talk about, is the chair in the room. Okay, Russ's chair in the bedroom.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so that if you could just tell that story, and then I'll start with my story, and then you tell your story, and then see if it doesn't wake up what I got available to me. Okay. And I'm recording it, and if it doesn't fly, I'll just not post it on YouTube. If it does fly, I'll post it on YouTube and then send it out to the magicians.
Okay.
So I know there's no coincidence. It's not random. It is coincidence because it's synchronicity, but it's not random that the two housemates I have, just like those of us that lived in sanctuary together, that wasn't random. And without our realizing it, we never tried to do anything. We just started paying attention to how creation was paying attention to us. And without us realizing it, we got to experience what we can't explain to other people, a coherent collective. So that's that. So so this I would be my third sanctuary basically. And
Yeah.
um and the in the story I told in the seven levels of consciousness about, I had this fairy, it was the size of my adult hand now, named Tomsy, that was just as real as Mickey, my dog. And I'm so glad Frank could see him, our gardener, and I'm glad Frank could say to me, "You got to tell Mr. Tomsy to stop flying in my face." So as a child, I had credibility for being part of what people
Yeah.
call otherworldly. And then my second event was a deciding event, what you and I talked about, it moving between imagination, fantasy to imagination, to being directly in an experience that felt real to actually knowing it's real. Those three transitional points. And mine in Ireland, where literally I got shot up in the air when I screamed no because I knew I was not looking at 12-foot trees, 40-foot, 12, 40-foot trees in a meadow. I was looking at 12, 40-foot effervescent beings. And it was the, I didn't really realize it till today in the conversation. It was really a nervous system electrical shock that literally
Yeah.
knocked me up in the air and knocked me about 6 feet straight into Brendan, who was standing there staring at me. But it cracked the code. And then after that, I began to be at ease in multidimensional experiences that are no different for me than you and I, like a person and myself are in this reality. So that moves us to here. So just to tell my story, uh, I, I'm going to find out a word while I'm sitting here because I really want to use a word because there's an indigenous word. Let me just write it down. It's a Spanish word for potion woman.
Mm.
So when Jan, who our last, yeah, it's called, Curandera. It's a potion, a woman of potions.
Hmm.
And it's also called the woman of potions in literal, but Curandera is the woman of potions. So when Jan, she came from Furnish Finders. I didn't know her from thing, only I had known that, and we'd done things around the house to make sure this held the space of sanctuary. And her first words were, when I saw this was a sanctuary, that's what I'd been directed to find. But then when she moved in the house, she had jars about this big. Uh, I saw so many weeds and plants in these jars, and she orders in bulk all sorts of things from to to, uh, um, to plants. I don't even know what the names are, do you know? And
Yeah.
also just to make that connection, because you talked about in the seven levels, you talked about, your relationship to the garden. It's a living field for you. So that isn't normal. That isn't my direct link with creation. So she started to not only bring in the kind of shamanic Ayahuasca, all those domains of existence, plus her direct, she forges for mushrooms. So
Mhm.
much more a pan environment, a being, than me having plants in the backyard, basically. So I don't think it was any accident the other morning with her. And then Jess came back, and they're very coherent together, and they're very magical, each in their own rights. Her field of being, Jess's, has always been playful, magical. So
Yeah.
they carry the components of the field of Pan. So it gave him access back into here. And and then I had the experiences I shared, and then talk to the people about being in direct relationship with creation. But it isn't the pan part that I people deal with that ever how they do. It was the phenomenon of, in a working coherence, we can get, as a collective, we can get present to things we can't get present to because they come from a collective coherence. They don't come just from individual experience. Even though people can have individual experience,
Mhm.
we're looking at, you talked about today in the call, you were struggling linguistically to try to talk about collective coherence. And I realized that I have this demonstration of collective coherence because it was a system that had reawakened here by by the components of the beings being here. And then I would suggest in the story about the chair that it wasn't people centric, it was field centric, but that you all had become a collective coherence, and that it was the evidence of that collective coherence that stabilized your ability to move through da da da. Okay, do you get my gist
Yeah, I do.
for it?
So the background is that, Russ has had some health issues, and being able to get good sleep with his feet up is been part of his healing process and a logistical issue. He different things we've tried and he's tried weren't working. And so I don't know if his doctor suggested the recliner. I don't know where the idea came from. But when he came home and told Megan and I, it was just obvious he had to get a recliner. And I did certain things to move it forward. It wasn't, it was fine that I did those things, but it wasn't the full potential of resolution. And then, God, last Saturday, 1 week, we went to a store and got him a recliner. The minute he sat in it, he felt like he said, I can rest. And
Which is coherence.
which is coherence between him and his body, him and his health, whatever. And I felt so much relief, like, geez, he's going to be able to start impacting this health issue cluster so that, you know, 6 months, whatever, I'll start having my husband back more instead of the way it had been going. So then we're home, we're talking about it. It's so exciting. Both of us are in chair equals living room because that was just our mindset. And if he was going to have his recliner in the living room, then I was going to keep his rocking chair, the one he uses now, and that means get rid of the couch I'm currently sitting on. The rocker's going to be here. And he said, while we're working all this out, we can put the current rocker back in our room a certain way, but it would mean part just for storage while we moved all the parts all around. But it would have to come across the bed. It would lay partly on the bed. Well, we've got a king size bed, so logistically that makes sense. That's fine, and it put me over the edge. I just went off the deep end. It was like so instant. I didn't mean for it to happen. I wasn't trying to be any kind of way. I just suddenly realized a rocking chair was going to replace my husband in bed. No, I was not. I was suddenly present to, I'm now going to have to live as if he were dead for half, whatever sleep time. I expect him to not be in my room or in my bed when he's dead. And the intensity of so thankful he's going to be well and has the logistics that contribute to his well-being, and in so much grief that I was going to have to live as if he's dead while he's alive. They were Those are irreconcilable. And all the conversation in my own mind, how could I possibly be so awful? He's gonna be well. Yeah, but what about me? This is real too. Total equal opposite, apparently, in realities, and I had the blessing of really communicating to Russ. Yes, I had a very emotional reaction, meltdown, whatever you all want to call it. But that doesn't mean that's a bad thing. And I really communicated it all. And part of how I know it was real, communication was he was able to be with it. He has trouble being with intensity sometimes. And he would sit there and he was really being with me. And then we just had to stop. Neither of us had an answer. We had no answer, and neither one could be sacrificed even a little bit.
But it was
But
the
we just had,
beginning of the suggestion or the evidence or the possibility of between he and she. It was a different framework of experience.
yeah,
There was a coherency rather than it being incoherent.
correct. Even while there seemed to be no reconciliation between the two little segments of reality.
Even though reasoning seemed to not be satisfied.
Yes. And so then there was nothing to do but what some people call let go and let God, nothing to do. So I went back to what I was doing on the computer, and suddenly and he's saying, come here. He was getting up and starting to rearrange the room. Now he is good at thinking outside the box, but this is like almost 10 o'clock at night. And he started talking to me. 10:30, we call our grandson down and start throwing the bedroom furniture all around. And he was completely in, like something had moved him, but that's also part of his nature. Like he gets moved and he moves. And so we just threw all the furniture around, which means a lot of just everything about all the rooms are now disorganized because they are. It's a mess. But the point is he figured out a way that his recliner is now, when it got delivered, the workman put it in there. Like we didn't know how heavy it was going to be. So that's Saturday. And Saturday by 11:30 at night, we'd thrown all the furniture around. I can't tell you what peace, even though it got delivered Sunday and so forth, there were there was so much peace. I don't care. Normally, this level of disarray bothers me sensorially. It's disturbing. It's hard for me. And I'm not bothered, hardly at all. All, like
The bother doesn't rule.
not at all. And it doesn't mean that when I am bothered by it that there's anything wrong with that. It means it's, as you said, it's not ruling, it's not swaying the formation of right world. And so he so we it's in there. It's still a mess. I've ordered the bed that I'm getting now to replace our previous bed. We've got it sorted out. But the point is, the how do I say this? The experience of not just relief, but being met by another in the field. And I am not saying anything about he doesn't usually, none of that. And we've had our moments of misalignment. But this was a with another in the field. And I felt something crack. If my framework of mind was like a nutshell, which kind of in a way it is, metaphorically, I felt it crack. I felt this realignment of life, of our ability to uh, maintain the structures that would support his health to continually increase, and our connection together. What's real about that for me, and that we didn't have to sacrifice one for the other at all. I felt it was the words that kind of came in my brain was you are included. You are included. Like I knew that experience of crack was, I'm going to call it creation meeting me, meeting us, meeting the furniture in the room, such that right world could occur. And I'm completely changed. My neurology is outside a box. However far I may or may not have come before, I got moved to a next greater whole right then and there. So that's that story. Did I capture the points that you're
Yeah.
after?
And so why I wanted Deb and I to do these experiences is not to give you a method to do something. I mean, a method is do the creation templates and et cetera and so on, but that is not the place I operate, was to give you an example of the experience of collective coherence. It's like a mystery because
Yeah.
for the most part in our world, we don't live in a collective coherence. We live in a survival modality of what I individually need to survive, or sometimes there's a collective egregore that thinks it needs something to survive. So that's the only reason I wanted to do this, because I just don't think the mental mind has the capacity to think in a collective coherence capacity yet. I don't think it can't perceive something it has not yet experienced. And I said to Deb when we were discussing this earlier, before our class, in our 50-minute recorded conversation, was in one of the famous quotes of the Buddha is enlightenment is when all needs are satisfied. But they're not survival needs, they're relational needs. They're relational to knowing that we're included. It's a perfect phrase, knowing that we're included. And so Deb's example uh, is a really good example of we're not included in a reality of separation, which is the dominant reality at this juncture. You can read all about this in the language of creation, your original design. But as the realities of unity, these are frameworks, not like circumstances. As the frameworks of realities of unity restore here, then we're going to have these collective coherent experiences. Like I'm back in the magic of sanctuary in my New Mexico home, just like the components of the people that were in the other sanctuaries generated without our realizing it, not trying to do it. It didn't live in belief systems. It didn't believe in application. It just was a magic, an occurrence. We lived in a kind of a collective awareness of moving with creation. And now the components are here in my home in New Mexico, the experience of moving in a collective coherence. And then it's interesting that because Deb and I are very coherent together, we bounce off each other and really restabilize in our direct communication with each other. We restabilize each of our direct link with creation, not through belief, but through with another in the field she was talking about. And and so it makes me wonder if the in linear time, these two incidences occurred in a very close manner. Her experience of a collective coherent coming into the from the nonlinear into the everyday world, and my experience of my childhood relationship with Pan restoring itself because the conditions of the field of sanctuary were satisfied here, which is simply sanctuary is simply for me a carefully crafted statement of
Hmm.
collective coherence. So
Hmm.
anything else, Deb? Because I want to keep it short. I just wanted to be a taster. I don't, stories were always the way people got access um, uh, to experiences they were having, but had no way to bring it to language. So that's the point of this conversation.
Yeah. I want to reiterate that it isn't about things worked out
To survive.
and it to survive and survival of my emotional state, whatever, because logistically or whatever, from that reference point, Russ's physical survival, making gains in his health, that was the survival. Me having a change in our configuration of how we express uh, our marriage together had nothing to do with survival from one reference point. From another reference point, it had everything to do. So it's not about it worked out for me. It's about some kind of flow of alignment and patterning of existence that's real for me and real for Russ, or real enough that he could move with it, uh, and move with it. Maybe it was just because he knew how much it mattered to me, like on my behalf. But it was about what worked out was an alignment of resonance of a different kind of life. That's the best I can do.
Yeah, yeah. I want to add this last part just because I don't want to go very far with it. Something happened yesterday. I just want to, because mostly I do these recordings not to teach anybody anything, but because we've seen with the people coming on just for the once a month and 7 levels of consciousness, there's something many of us are experiencing that because we work in language, the language of creation, we're at work to articulate things where other people are just trying to understand things. And we're working to articulate something. So another really curious thing happened yesterday. Uh, Basically, the gathering of the nations here in Albuquerque would be the last time in Albuquerque. It felt really important to go. but a smaller rendition of that, more intimate, at the Pueblo Cultural Center was also happening. And I just had knee replacement, so it just didn't warrant me to walk across the fairgrounds. So that was kind of like the survival aspect of it. But the truth was, I've been developing. Uh, I love to go to the Pueblo Cultural Center because of the level of affinity, intimacy, vitality there, and that would be a smaller field of occurrence that could be, yet at the same time participate in a larger field of occurrence. So in the beginning, in the morning, I said I'd like to leave at 10, and the response was, well, we'd get there too early. Uh, and I said, well, then we'll leave in your timing. But I knew the person was speaking from linear time. I was speaking relationally. And so there's something about the nonlinear, the relational movement of time that I just want to put it in this recording because you also peeked into it. It's like a kerfuffle where you said, even though it didn't show up to Sunday, that's linear time. That's how
Mm,
adapted to things happen in sequential order, and that the sequential order is the evidence of something occurring, and it is not.
it
It,
is not.
it is the relational order. So you also demonstrated the nonlinear relational order, which actually makes it weird to think the chair showed up on Sunday when it already in nonlinear time was there on Saturday.
It really was. Thanks for that, catching that. I really do appreciate that because the whole occurrence actually happened Saturday, Saturday night,
Yeah. And it
and
got
didn't
pulled
even,
into time. And it doesn't matter when it gets pulled into time. So this
mm-mm,
is what we mean in the work we're doing, that we're in a direct experience often
yeah.
before that direct experience manifests itself in a linear time. And that's the taste
Yes.
I wanted to bring to
So a
it.
more correct way to say it was, yeah, we stopped about 11:30 at night. We were done throwing furniture around, but the receiving, the actually placing the chair in the room was a continuation. It was not, it was, the whole event happened Saturday with
Yes.
the,
So
yeah,
the the coherence occurred and the chair moved into the coherence.
yes,
Field first, activity second.
yes, yes. Thank you.
Building first, activity second. Okay, great.
Mhm.
Thanks, Deb. I wanted to capture that. And I didn't
Okay,
record
great.
on YouTube because there are people coming on back on YouTube that um, have been missing these conversations. So off we go.
Okay. And Russ is calling me. I gotta go.